where it's good for the soul. Check TV. It's here.
Hi, I'm Judy Tyabji. Thank you very much for joining us today. And today we start the first in a two-part series that we've been telling you about for about a month. And we're looking at the book Stolen from Our Embrace. Now, a word of warning, some of the content for today's show will be a little bit difficult for people to take. And if you have small children watching, especially about halfway through the show, we're going to present something to you that may be very difficult for them. You may want to ask them to leave the room. But it's a very important subject. And of course, it's only human nature to want to go into denial when we hear about very difficult things. But now I think our own communities are calling us to action. And some of you will remember that in January this year, we had Ron Hamilton as a guest. He made a comment, and so I'm yielding the floor on the editorial to him today. Let's take a look at what he said.
For a big chunk of my life, I literally hated anyone who had skin that wasn't like mine, who didn't have hair like mine. I wondered for many years, where are the good people of this country? Where are the good people here? As a teenager, I hitchhiked to Alabama. I was through Louisiana. I was all through the southern United States. And I saw good, strong, intelligent, articulate, healthy, non-black people standing up beside black people and saying, we need to change the way we are. And for many years, I wondered, where are the good people in this country? Right. Well, I want to say to the people who spoke over the phone lines on your program and to the people who spoke on the cameras in the street, those good people are starting to stand up and show their faces and be counted. And I, for one, am really very grateful for that.
And of course, when we talk about today's show, The Stolen from Our Embrace deals with 4 generations of residential schools and today's practice of apprehending Aboriginal children. It also deals with contemporary issues in the urban centers that have to do with fetal alcohol syndrome, fetal alcohol effect, and most recently, the youth movement in the Aboriginal community and how they're starting to act out based on their convictions. So a huge number of issues. We'd like to hear from you if you have comments, questions, if you want to share your story, and we'll take your calls right now.
The Tyabji phone lines are now open. From Victoria, call 383-6036 or toll free at 1-888-383-6036. Call now.
And the 2 authors of the book are with us today, Suzanne Fournier and Ernie Cray. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, congratulations on winning the book prize over the weekend. That must have been very nice. Very gratifying.
It's a thrill.
Okay, now, Suzanne, you are a journalist with the Vancouver Province, and Ernie, you are with the Stalo Nation in the Fraser Valley.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm going to start with you because this book, you said, I think it took 6 or 7 years to write.
It did.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to share with us what the most compelling memory is of your research into the book.
Well, as we were nearing the end of the preparation of the book, or the writing of the book, together we did travel to Cooper Island, which is not a great distance from here. And the Aboriginal people there, as well as Aboriginal people from all across the province, congregated there, people who had actually attended the school. And it was the ceremony that was there was intended to sort of put the memories of the school behind. And it was a really touching scene there, where the cornerstone of the building of this school, this infamous school, was tossed into the salt chuck by the Aboriginal people gathered there, as well as flowers were thrown into the water. And this was to commemorate each of the children who had died at the school. So speaking for myself, it was a very touching moment. It brought a tear to our eye, but it also brought hope that change was afoot, and that the community, the Aboriginal communities themselves, were about to start creating that change.
Okay, now when you say that they threw flowers in for each child who died, how many children had died?
Oh, I can't remember the precise number of flowers that were...
So it was more than just 1 or 2 flowers being thrown in?
Yeah, and we have to remember that well in excess of 40% of the children that attended residential schools in Canada actually died there, or they died shortly after they were released from the schools and sent home, and basically they were sent home to die from diseases like tuberculosis and the like.
It really, it staggers the mind. I know many people, I know myself, I'm just coming to learn a lot about these issues. Some of the people I've talked to have never even heard of residential schools, and some of the people watching may have, this might be the first time they've encountered it. Suzanne, you've been writing about Aboriginal issues for 20 years. In researching this book, did you learn anything new, or was it a lot of what you'd already written about?
No, it's a continual learning experience, and I think the most powerful lesson for me is that this is certainly a community of people that have experienced a very deep wounding, kind of wounding that I was familiar with because my own father attended a residential school. But I also see it as a community that has an infinite capacity for regrowth and regeneration. And I was amazed to go to community after community, from the Navajo Nation to Manitoba to Ernie's own Stalo Nation, and see people who had been very deeply hurt have a capacity to heal and share and give. And I think that's the cornerstone of the rebuilding of the communities.
Okay, now just before we go to the phones, we're going to share with people some of the information from your book on residential schools and on what happened. And as we say, there are 6 segments to today and tomorrow's show. And so this is the first one on residential schools. Now, residential schools were set up by the federal government and some powerful churches for Aboriginal children. And you should know that government agents physically removed the children from their families, and sometimes they had the help of the RCMP. They sent the children to live in schools modeled after American industrial schools, and the goal of the schools was to kill the Indian and save the man, and remove all traces of culture, language, and traditions, and assimilate natives. And a great deal of physical and sexual abuse occurred at these schools. Now, the scandal of Aboriginal schools first hit the media in 1907 in 2 Eastern magazines when they reported a high death rate. 24% of children in the schools were dying, and as Ernie said, this number was 42% if you included the children who were sent home to die. But nothing was done because a lawyer who advised the government said fixing the problem could make the government responsible for the deaths. So instead of adopting recommended changes, the government buried the problems until the 1960s. And BC saw the first residential schools in 1857, and by 1931 there were over 80 schools, and about 1/3 of all Aboriginal children were confined to the schools until the mid-1970s, most of them for the majority of their childhoods. There are allegations of murder at some schools. Court cases continue to this day to hold former church officials, government representatives, and school officials accountable. To date, there has been no offer of open access to government records, and nor has there been any offer of compensation, notwithstanding the government's announcement that they were going to provide some funding for programs. And you should also be aware that on June 12th in Vancouver, we've just learned today that the United Nations is going to hold a tribunal into residential schools, and that will look into some of the deaths. So I guess, Ernie, how do we get towards solutions? I mean, there's a lot of people watching right now who may feel that they're at some distance from this, but all of our tax money is going into the current system and the previous system. How do we work on solutions?
Well, where we start, because we're all responsible citizens, or I hope that we are, of British Columbia
Right.
and Canada. What we do is we acquaint ourselves or reacquaint ourselves with the history of the country and the province, and we focus in on the historical relationship between Aboriginal people and the rest of society, and in this case, particularly Aboriginal children and families. We acquaint ourselves with initiatives already underway in the Aboriginal community, such as the Residential School Task Force
Right.
that exists with the summit. We try to take the time to go to the public library or university library and attempt to retrieve copies of the Royal Commission, a very expensive undertaking.
The one that just came out last year.
Was recently completed, inquiring into all aspects of Aboriginal people's lives. Very instructive, very informative, and should help Canadians make suggestions or lobby MLAs,
Right.
members of Parliament, on a new direction in social policy,
Okay.
a new relationship with Aboriginal communities. I think that's where we start, and we also start by making friendships, establishing relationships between non-Aboriginal communities and Aboriginal communities that are nearby.
Okay, I'm sure we do need to
Yeah.
build bridges. We're going to take calls starting now. And for those of you who are not directly affected by this, I think it's important for us to now voice how we feel about these issues as well. Let's start, though, by talking to Donovan in Vancouver. Hi, Donovan.
Hi. I'm a first, guest generation from the residential school. Like, my mother was there,
Right.
and my family, and we have, like, I guess, allegations too of death. My auntie told me before she died at age 40 that a year ago that one of the things that she always dreamt about was remember seeing the brothers beat my cousin to death. They told the police said they investigated. The coroner said it was some kind of childhood disease, but it wasn't. And it was never addressed. And to me, you know, it's living in the city was just as hard because there wasn't much reaching out from the Caucasian community to me.
Right.
And like, I tried really hard though, and I mean, I still don't feel ill feelings towards them, but I feel like somehow I need to be just acknowledged, like the feeling just acknowledged,
Right.
and what happened acknowledged, and like let's try to move towards a reuniting of our community and a celebration of our cultural differences and what the values we hold, that we all believe, as Canadians, as individuals, and and part of that I think is going to be education for the young Native youth for our age,
Right.
And a recognition of the urban Native youth. I mean, the majority of us live in the city,
Right, right.
and I've had like living in one city, I had trouble getting working in restaurants because they had all the Native people in the back of the restaurant, right? And I had worked as a waiter for 7 years in 5-star restaurants
Right.
beforehand, and now I was like, oh, okay, well I can't work as a waiter, and it was
Right.
quite obvious the racism. So it's like a whole multi-issue. It's not just one thing.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that, Donovan. And I guess that must be very difficult for someone. Now, the first thing he talked about, though, the allegation that there were beatings and murder and there was no accountability. I know that there are court cases going on right now. I know that a lot of that's been addressed. Actually, I'll ask you about this, Suzanne, because you're a journalist with the Province newspaper. It's a province-wide paper. How is that being addressed from the media's perspective so that there's more accountability and more coverage?
Well, I think that the role of the media is to be a witness to these events, and I think that if we were to look at, similar child deaths that had occurred in any other setting, there would probably be a far more rigorous investigation.
Right.
And I think, there may be sort of a compassion fatigue among some of the members of the media who say, well, we've heard this story before, or, this is familiar to us. Well, the death of a child should never be taken as lightly or as as given as inconsiderate a treatment as some of these allegations have. I know that in the Cooper Island situation, specific deaths where people could remember time and names and dates, and also in the Port Alberni school,
Right.
They've been forwarded to the RCMP and to lawyers over and over and over again.
And there's no
now,
action
if
being
these
taken.
were children who had died in a daycare, in another home, in some other setting, I suggest there might have been a more vigorous investigation.
Okay, we're way over time for a break. We'll be back with your calls and comments, and we're talking about the issues raised and stolen from our embrace, which include residential schools and the current situation for Aboriginal people who are our next door neighbors. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's add this up. Pregnancy, 9 months, 17 pounds of water weight gain, 26 hours of labor. But that's okay. I love them. Glad to do it. 240 sleepless nights, 1,089 diaper changes, and they're in kindergarten. 447 hours of homework. I love them, but Einstein's they ain't. And then, wait for it, adolescence. Oh.
Want to make it up to Mom? Start by picking up the new KFC Mom's Mega Meal, featuring a creamy white chocolate cheesecake and Mother's Day Hallmark card.
Real meals, easy as KFC.
Been hunting around for meal ideas? Start with cheese and your meals will evolve. When you've got cheese, you've got choice.
Rainy day blues got you down, don't frown, girl. Just smile at the sun and cover girl seashells. She says, seashells. New shades by cover girl. Pink shells, sand castles, silver plums, and everything is sun-kissed. So get what she says. Cover girl, seashells. A fresh idea, a fresh face to the world. Easy breezy, beautiful cover girl.
Hi, can I take your order?
Can I get a hamburger?
Will that be all?
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, come again. Can I take your order?
Fish.
All right.
For healthy-looking skin, wash with Noxzema. It helps scrub out oil and dirt, won't overstrip skin of its natural moisture like some soap can.
Look, if you're free tonight, maybe we could go to a movie.
I'm afraid I don't get off until 10.
Noxema girls get noticed.
And we're talking about Aboriginal issues and particularly what's happened in terms of public policy toward Aboriginal children for the last 4 or 5 generations. Now, we're doing something a little bit differently today. I'm going to present to you right now a fairly long presentation of information, and the reason we're doing that is so that you at home who haven't read the book, which is the majority of you, will have some idea about what we're talking about, and then we'll get as many calls in as we can. But you should know that traditional Aboriginal culture puts the child at the center of the village and stresses that the community is responsible for each child. Now, the Federal Indian Act to this day deems all status Aboriginal people mentally incompetent. So as wards of the state, many end up on welfare or on reserves where they cannot own land and where the government dictates many aspects of their lives. Several generations of residential school led to poor education, which, combined with substance abuse issues such as alcohol, drug, and sex addiction, destroyed the child-centered tradition. And after the residential schools came the child welfare system. In the 1950s, the federal government began paying provincial governments for every Aboriginal child apprehended, and children were removed from reserves in record numbers. In 1959, only 1% of children in government care were Aboriginal, but by the 1960s, this number rose to between 30 and 40%. Aboriginal children were separated from brothers or sisters, adopted out to non-native families, and their birth names and tribes of origin were usually lost. Some villages lost almost an entire generation of children to foster care, and the huge number of children apprehended meant that foster families were not adequately screened. Many Aboriginal children were sold into adoption to American families, with stories of American couples driving onto reserves with social workers and driving off with a child. According to modern social service agencies, 85% of transcultural adoptions fail at adolescence. A 1990 survey of Prince Albert prisoners found over 95% came from either group homes or foster homes. Now, United Native Nations workers estimate that half to 3/4 of Vancouver's street youth are from foster care or runaways from adoptions. And of these, they estimate that 80% of the girls and about half of the boys were sexually abused. Many have children at a young age who are also usually placed in foster care. And although the provincial government is negotiating with some bands to take over some child care responsibilities, the majority of Aboriginal street youth have few programs to help them with social issues. And today, right now, 52% of children taken into government care by court order are Aboriginal, and 78% of Aboriginal children in care are placed with non-Aboriginal families. And all of these things and the personal stories of some of these people and how it's affected their lives are the subject of this book, which is why we're doing the show today. And that was a marathon, but I'm really glad you presented that information. We're going to take some calls now, and I'm sure that they'd like to talk to you about these issues. And so we will start with Kim in Campbell River. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
My father was taken away in 1927 at the age of 6, removed from his home, placed in an Aboriginal school in residential in Coquilitza. He was returned then again when he was 14 and couldn't cope in his own village. He enfranchised when my brothers and sisters were small to make sure the same thing didn't happen to them, because this is when the social workers started coming to take the kids.
Right.
The abuse has been passed on down the line. I have had problems. My sisters and brothers have had problems.
Right.
I now have had my children apprehended, and we were so afraid of the system in Victoria because of the children being abused that I sent them up to my family.
Right. Where's your family now?
They're in Campbell River. I'm here visiting my sons.
Okay.
I'm in Victoria.
Right.
I have no access because I'm on welfare to see them. I have to come up here on my own, and I'm not being given any help. I demanded an Aboriginal worker, and as of yet, after 8 months, they haven't given me one.
Right.
I have no care system, and we've lost our heritage. We don't have our songs. We don't have our names. With nothing, because we had to leave our reserve so that my dad could try to save us.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that story. Ernie, this is a story that you deal with a lot in your book. It's not uncommon. So how do we help fix a system where there's generations of that? Because you talk about that. If they started off with abuse, then the abuse passes on cycle to cycle.
Yeah. The first thing is the Aboriginal community, and they are very much alive to the issue, is they have to recognize and see this history and how it continues to play itself out in our community. Children removed to schools, families torn asunder,
right.
Children attempting to return to their First Nation territory, attempting to reestablish ties, not doing it successfully, communities in a lot of trouble. But we're beginning to see some change now where some of the First Nations are beginning to wrestle with these issues, establish their own child care services, working cooperatively with the province, and in some instances the federal government, to begin the process of dealing with these issues.
Right.
Things are not happening as quickly as might need be in some communities, and this may be the case. I'm not familiar with that particular community.
Okay, let me take another call and let you answer that, Suzanne. Let's talk to Jackie in Vancouver. Hi, Jackie.
Hi. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks.
First of all, I'd like to make and congratulate all the youth workers out there. They're doing a good job. And my comment is, one of my things when I analyzed situations, residential schools was intended to break down First Nations mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. When they did that, they hurt. So they couldn't use their power and their good thoughts, because when you think good thoughts, good things happen around you. The breakdown of our fathers and our mothers and our grandparents was to reflect on our children. Our children are reacting to the abuses of their parents. And because of that, we need to heal. And a society isn't helping with that healing because they're all separated. You've got mental hospitals over there, physical hospitals over here, emotional hospitals over here, and you've got the spiritual. And the spiritual was broken down at the beginning. Sexual abuse broke down their emotions.
Right.
Mentally, they weren't competent to, put it this way, function, because everything's broken down.
Right.
And as long as the government is dictating the how would you say, I find Indians big business.
Right.
Big business.
Okay.
All the money is going all over the place except to the people. And the people got to start using their own initiative and going back to the earth, because put it this way, the native people are a lot stronger spiritually than anybody in this world, especially in this continent. And there's a lot of children that are suffering the same way natives are, because they have respect for the earth, they have respect for natives, and they're kicked out of their families because of that respect.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to stop you there because we're over time for break, but I know you wanted to make a comment, Suzanne, and I'd like you to answer that. And also, this idea, there's a lot of people who say that there's no way this level of abuse occurred in residential schools. There was a big feature in BC Report on that recently. How do you respond to that as a journalist?
Well, just quickly to respond to the callers, I think it's true that the health and community services are very fractured. They're all split apart, and the government has, perhaps cleverly divided them up into separate programs. And I just encourage callers to check with their own First Nation. She probably is entitled to assistance there. As for the levels of abuse, I think it's always important to recognize that not everyone had a bad time in residential school. And we have spoken to elders and to all kinds of people who say that school took them away from a very troubled home, that it was a positive experience in some ways, and it's important to recognize that. But I think there are many, many objective indicators of the levels of abuse. In fact, one of the best sources would be the government's own files.
Okay.
Some 60,000 files that were given to the Royal Commission that, again, there has been no public access to.
Okay.
And the other, of course, is anecdotal reports and the results that we see in the families. I think it's a very clear indicator.
Okay, we have to take a break. We'll be back with more of your calls and comments. And if you have a story to tell, we're here to listen. We'll be right back.
Tyabji is brought to you in part by Metro Lexus Toyota, leaders in customer satisfaction.
For the first time ever, the Air Miles reward program has arrived at the Brick. Now you can buy the best brand name furniture, mattresses, appliances, electronics, and home computers for less and earn Air Miles travel miles. Nobody beats the Brick.
Victoria, British Columbia doesn't close down after the summer sunsets. In fact, Victoria is even more enjoyable now during our secret season. Just call the Canadian Pacific's Empress Hotel and we'll tell you how to save on your stay with the Empress. Enjoy Empress afternoon tea. Take in the world-class Royal BC Museum. Go for a romantic carriage ride. We have a lot of other little secrets to offer, but you'll have to call to find out more about Victoria's secret season at the Empress.
Since 1978, Van Au Windows has been the company friends recommend to friends. Come celebrate with us. Call now to find out more about our anniversary specials on replacement windows. Add comfort and value to your home with locally manufactured Van Au windows, professionally installed at factory direct savings. Enter to win a weekend for two at the Airy Luxury Resort. Call now and find out why, after 20 years, Van Au Windows is still the company friends recommend to friends.
Hello, I'm Dick Belcher of RE/MAX Nanaimo. I'd like to invite you to tour some of Vancouver Island's finest real estate each and every Sunday morning at 11, right here on Check TV Channel 6.
I've always been pretty good in math, so I started going to this accelerated program at Sylvan, and now I'm like this total math whiz. My friends look at me like, what's up? It's kind of cool.
At Sylvan Learning Center, we help students succeed by assessing skills and personalizing programs so they can catch up or get ahead.
Call one of Vancouver Island's 4 Sylvan Learning Centers at 1-800-EDUCATE or check the white pages for the location nearest you.
Today we're talking about stolen children, specifically Aboriginal children. Our guest is Suzanne Fournier. She is one of the authors, Stolen from Our Embrace, and Ernie Cray, who is also the author of Stolen from Our Embrace. And he's with the Stalo Nation, and Suzanne is a columnist with the Vancouver Province. But we won't hold that against you. It's a little joke.
Why not?
Okay. We're going to take some calls, and then Suzanne is going to read a paragraph from the book, and I want to warn you that it's a very disturbing paragraph. And we do want you to know, because there are still some people who don't think that abuse occurred in residential schools, that they think it was based on a British boarding school model. So let's go back to the phones, talk to Tanya in Nanaimo. Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead.
I went to residential school, and I was one of the last generations to go.
Right.
And I was, I keep telling myself that nothing bad happened to me while I was there.
Right.
But when I got out of school and I was on my own, I found out that I lost a lot. I lost my culture, and my children suffer. Because they don't know the culture, they don't know the language.
Right.
And it's time to stop. My granddaughter is going to cultural school down on the reserve.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which I think is really neat, because none of my kids or myself got that chance.
Right.
And I think now is the time to break that chain and say,
okay,
we got to get back into our culture.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Tanya. I think that's probably true, and we all benefit anyway from Aboriginal culture. It's interesting.
Right. This is this story that she just related to us is simple and direct, but very profound. When these young people went off to these schools, generation after generation, they lost touch with the culture, the language, and the values of the society. And so now the huge push in the Aboriginal community is restoration of values and language and the like.
And hopefully that will help address some of the social issues. Tomorrow, for example, when we talk about fetal alcohol effect, fetal alcohol syndrome, the anger of the youth.
Because it's linked to pride in self and pride in community, and that's part of what vanished as well.
Okay. Now, Suzanne, we'd like you to read and this is just one paragraph, and I should mention that this is an important book to read mainly for the information you get, and I didn't realize that it was that bad. But if you could read that, and a warning, please don't let any children hear this.
This is the story of Emily Rice, who lives still on the reserve near Chemainus. She attended the Cooper Island Residential School, which many of the students who attended that school called it Alcatraz because there was a gap of water in which many children drowned trying to escape. She was 8 when she first went there. By the time Emily Rice left Cooper Island in 1959 at the age of 11, she had been repeatedly assaulted and sexually abused by Father Jackson and 3 other priests, one of whom plied her with alcohol before raping her. A nun, Sister Mary Margaret, known for peeping at the girls in the shower and grabbing their breasts, was infuriated when Emily resisted her advances. She took a big stick with bark on it and rammed it right inside my vagina, recalls Rice. She told me to say I'd fallen on the stick and that she was just trying to get it out. The girl crawled into the infirmary the next day, too afraid to name the perpetrator. Nevertheless, when Emily returned to the dorm a few days later, the beatings by Sister Mary Margaret and the other nuns resumed without pause. In the years that followed, Emily would have to twice undergo reconstructive vaginal surgery, and she suffered permanent hearing loss. Father Jackson also wanted to make sure no one would talk. On the sisters' first trip at home at Christmas, he suspended Rose, Emily's sister, by her feet over the side of the boat, threatening to release her into the freezing waves unless she promised to stay silent.
And that would explain why we didn't hear a lot of these stories until recently. I think it's very brave, the people who've come forward to tell these stories, and it's important that we know. I mean, just bearing witness, I think, is important. We'll take another call. Let's talk to Arthur now in Vancouver. Hi, Arthur.
Yeah, hi, Judy. Long time no hear from me. In the French exploration in North America in 1700 to 1800, it is noted in the far west explored the cultural, the mores, the cosmology, and the religious beliefs of the Indians, which believe just in the one God, right, which they adopted to the Indians. These are the explorers, adopted to the Indians' way of life. The Indian nations called the tune, for all Indians were free. No one, no group could compel an Indian to do anything that he chose not to do. With the coming of the 19th century, this is all to change. Indians should adopt to European ways. The Indian babies were brutally taken from their mother's bosom and put into institutions. The Christian missionary societies did more damage to Indian family life than good. They divided the family. Children were taken and sold to circuses, into the sex trade in the United States of America. That's where they went, to dance halls and bordellos by white people whom they had been entrusted with.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to stop you there. Thank you very much for that. There's a problem with the audio, but I appreciate what you're saying. A lot of those things are things that you actually do document. Prostitution, very high rate of Aboriginal people, and there's only, what, 4 to 6% of the whole population is Aboriginal. Something like 60%.
And what he refers to about Native youth being removed from British Columbia, that's the case. We have a documented incident involving the son of a Scowlitz chief, a Stalo chief, who was removed by a gold miner in the Fraser Valley and taken to California. His identity had been changed completely. The child's remains rest in a grave in Sacramento.
He was
They've
killed.
not been returned. He died there. It's not clear what he died of. So this Stalo child is lying in a grave under another identity that was given to him, and so the Stalo are aware that these things happen, as are many other First Nations.
Right. Well, we would have to take another break, and we'll be back with more of your calls and comments about our common history, because that's what it is. It's our common history, and we're just learning about one side of it, and we'll be right back.
Get a smile at Thrifty Foods, you're getting more. I laughed a ride. Thrifty Foods, there's so much in store. We're trying to keep the island smiling each and every day. We're trying to do all we can do. The smile's in the bag for you. Vancouver Island's homegrown food store. Thrifty Foods.
Edgar & Miner have a whole new look. Now they're Edgar & Miner Carpet One.
It's simple. More buying power means better savings.
Low prices, quality carpet.
We have got the best guarantees.
25-year wear warranty and a 15-year mat crush warranty.
And a 60-day satisfaction guarantee.
And at Edgar & Miner Carpet One in Victoria, make no payments and pay no interest for 6 months.
Value, total value. Still the same Victoria tradition.
Visit the new Edgar & Miner Carpet One on Bay.
Victoria, British Columbia doesn't close down after the summer sun sets. In fact, Victoria is even more enjoyable now during our secret season. Just call the Canadian Pacific's Empress Hotel and we'll tell you how to save on your stay with the Empress. Enjoy Empress afternoon tea. Take in the world-class Royal BC Museum. Go for a romantic carriage ride. We have a lot of other little secrets to offer, but you'll have to call to find out more about Victoria's secret season at the Empress.
Sometimes you get a craving for great classic rock. Rock 101 plays a better mix of great classic rock. When you need classic rock, only one radio station gives you a better mix of great classic rock. Yeah! Vancouver's better mix of classic rock, Rock 101.
And we're talking to the two authors of Stolen from Our Embrace, Suzanne Fournier and Ernie Cray. And tomorrow, just so you know, we're doing part 2 of this with a mom and a daughter who deal with fetal alcohol syndrome, and also the downtown east side worker in the Vancouver Native Health Center. So it should be quite interesting. Let's take some calls. Frank in Port Coquitlam. Hi, Frank.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I've had the pleasure of working in almost every province in this country, and there seems to be a misconception amongst welfare workers, and police too for that matter, that when they're dealing with First Nations people, that they're dealing with people that are not of their same level as they are. I think that the welfare agencies particularly show lack of respect when they hijack and continue to abduct these children from the reserves to raise them in a way that they feel in their minuscule little minds is the best way to raise them. I think that there should be programs in place that work with the First Nations people to allow them to look after these problems on their own.
Right.
They're quite capable. I've dealt with them in business, and they're extremely shrewd businessmen. They're everyone's equal.
Too shrewd.
And, well...
No, I'm just joking, because actually you can't see him, but Lester Ned is sitting over there, and he's with the Stallo Fishery, so he's laughing. Anyway, yeah.
But, you know, like, I think attitudes amongst welfare agencies, they do this, I think, to safeguard their own interest. They become like industries rather than agencies to assist people. They're like an industry in themselves.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I'm glad you raised that. The idea of it being an industry, as we showed in the graphics, as soon as the promises were being paid per child, the number went up. This negotiations industry with the bands getting deeper and deeper into debt and no treaties being signed, and there's a whole industry around Aboriginal people. Well, how is that going to end?
Well, it started after the war. The social workers in Canada have had and have a national organization, and they became real advocates, perhaps at one point with good intentions, but nonetheless, they did want to see this massive intrusion, and in fact recommended to the federal government and provincial governments that there'd be a large intrusion of the social work profession into the Aboriginal community. So,
well, in Quesnel, we saw that the majority of those kids, or a big portion, were
a large
Aboriginal.
percentage are Aboriginal.
Right, and with the 250 people being hired now, even if they look for First Nations workers, they may not find them with bachelor's or master's degrees, because it's hard enough to find anybody with a bachelor or master's in social work.
Well, and that's the thing to keep in mind, is many of the workers inside the system, some terrific folks, I might add, who have in fact saved some of our children, but nonetheless, many of the folks inside the system do not have, academic standing as social workers.
Right. Okay. Let's take a call now from Kelly in Victoria. Hi, Kelly.
Hi. Great show.
Oh, thanks.
I just wanted to say, concerning the residential schools, my uncle, he's my uncle by marriage, went to residential school, and right now he's dealing with these problems, and I think that's really great. And my stepmother's First Nations, and I just feel really awkward when I'm on buses and I have gifts like bags with First Nations art on it, and I get really dirty looks, and I feel like I'm the enemy, like I've done something wrong, and I don't know, I don't like that. I want to help. I don't feel that. I feel like I'm really, in some ways this is creating a problem and separating us.
Okay, well, and thanks for that. I think you were talking about it being a backlash?
We were just whispering on the side here. Yeah, there is a bit of a climate in British Columbia until people become more familiar with the issues. There's a lot of resentment out there about treaties
Sure.
and the negotiations of self-government arrangements and the like. These things have to work their way through, but I think that that's probably where some of it comes from.
I think we have to get as much
Yeah.
information
Yeah.
out as possible. One of my frustrations is it's very difficult. I mean, I thought I knew a lot, and I learned a lot from reading your book. There's got to be other places where people can get information as well, but it's hard to find. Okay, we're going to actually show you now a piece of tape. Now, in this book, they also deal with the youth Native movement. Is it called the Youth Native Movement?
Native Youth Movement.
The Native Youth Movement. Sorry, the Native Youth Movement. Huge proportion of Aboriginal people are under 25, and they have decided to take political action into their own hands, and they were occupying the BC Treaty Commission office. And here's a comment from them. We're going to take a look at it. There's the BC Treaty Commission, and there's the protest, and they want to be heard on the issue of land claims negotiations.
Well, I think we've been able to kind of be a thorn in the side of the BC Treaty Commission and the process itself, and that's what we want. You know, we want these people to know that we have no interest in being at the negotiating table. We want this process to stop, and we intend to unify the people that believe the same.
And it's interesting. Now, his name is Dave Dennis. Now, they've arrested a number of them. At the time that we went to air, we didn't know what had happened in court because they have been taken to court for occupying the offices. About 60 young people were there. And so far, they're committed to nonviolent action. I'm not sure how long that'll last if they get really frustrated. I don't know. What can you tell us about the occupation?
Well, I think the Native Youth Movement is actually a very healthy phenomenon. There's 56% of Aboriginal youth are under the age of 25, and I think what these young people are saying, whether they be Dene, Carrier, Nachalnath, or Stalo, is that our elders are engaged in negotiation of a treaty process, and again, there's a misapprehension that Aboriginal people are getting wealthy from treaties. This is, of course, borrowed money, that First Nations have to borrow the money to negotiate the treaties, and although the result at the end of the day may benefit everyone, these children I call them, youth, they feel that they are inheriting a debt load which makes college students' debt pale by comparison.
Right. Yeah, because I think one band alone is $20 million, one that we profile on the show. We have to take another break. I know the lines are jammed and everybody wants to talk about this issue. So we'll be right back. And don't despair if you're trying to get through or you're on the line, because tomorrow we will have a chance to continue the discussion, but we'll be right back.
Remove the background, and it all becomes amazingly clear. The Digital PCS Network. Be free. BC Tel Mobility.
Bob Woods is back in school. He's not a teacher or a student. Bob is a mentor. By giving just 1 hour a week, he's making a difference in the life of a child. And you could too. Simple, rewarding, fun. Big Brothers and Sisters of Canada's mentoring program, sponsored by this station. Because like Bob, Wick cares. And right now, she hopes you care too.
When should you plant geranium cuttings? What's the only time of year to safely move peonies? How long can live Christmas trees remain indoors? Get answers to these and other questions by ordering the Get Up and Grow Gardening Guide and Calendar for 1998. Gord Nickel, host of the Get Up and Grow TV show, has compiled over 360 useful tips to help novices and green thumbs alike succeed in the garden. All of this timely information has been combined with rich botanical illustrations to give you an invaluable resource.
Hi, I'm Gord Nickel, host of Get Up and Grow, seen every Saturday morning on Check TV. Order the Get Up and Grow Gardening Guide and Calendar now, and you'll receive a Forget-Me-Not seed package at no extra cost.
To order your gardening guide and calendar, send $12.99 plus $2 shipping and handling to the address on your screen, or call 1-888-456-5577 and have your credit card handy. The guide is also available at Canner Nursery in Victoria, Abbotsford, and Chilliwack. Call now and get growing in 1998.
And we're talking about issues in the Aboriginal community and that, of course, affect all of us. And we're going back to the phone lines, try to get as many calls in as we can, starting with 2 back-to-back. Sam in Sechelt, go ahead, please. Sam?
Hello?
Hi, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hello, Judy?
Yes.
Hi, my name, I'm 37. Went to Cooper Island Residential.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. There's something wrong with the phone there. Sorry about that, Sam, but I couldn't hear him. Jan in Campbell River, go ahead, please.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have several comments about the residential schools.
Right.
I have not heard anything about the Kamloops residential school.
Okay.
It seems to be focused mainly on the island people.
Right.
We mustn't forget that there were people from the interior who were also in this era of
residential schools.
Yes, a residential school system that were taken from their families. I was one of them. I survived the residential school system.
Right.
And I believe our Native people are very strong, and they can survive anything.
Right.
They did survive the residential school system, and now our grandchildren. I have grandchildren.
Right.
I'm doing my best to teach them the culture of our Okanagan Nation.
Right.
And the only thing I have something that I don't like is the federal government doesn't seem to want to recognize the Bill C-31 women who have married into the non-Native society.
Oh, okay.
Their children are now called Bill C-31ers as well.
Right.
My grandchildren...
That means that you lose status. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Now, my grandchildren, they are not recognized. They are called now the X generation. They don't belong anywhere. Now, what I would like to see happen here is for the federal government to let go of the control of our people and let our grandchildren become and be recognized as part Native Indian people, who they are by my state standards.
Okay, well, thank you.
And that is why you see a lot of people on the streets who are not members.
Okay. Well, thank you for that explanation. Now,
well, she's taken up two issues here. One is, indeed, there were many residential schools in British Columbia. In fact, most the province really had the larger number of residential schools that were established in Canada. And indeed, folks from reserves in the Okanagan were forced to go to the Kamloops residential school, a residential school out in the Kootenays. Some of the folks were brought down to the coast.
Right.
Others from the coast were taken to the interior.
Right.
And it was both Protestant and Catholic institutions that were established.
Right. Now, when she talks about the status, this is kind of an irony because personally, the Indian Act is a racist piece of legislation. It's an offensive thing. And yet at the same time, if you're disenfranchised from it right now, the whole system is set up on it. So there's a whole generation of kids being left out.
You know, she makes an important point, too, that under Bill C-31, women who had married non-Native men were given their status back, but that right and that entitlement is not conferred upon their grandchildren.
Oh, I see.
And also it's important to recognize that a lot of Aboriginal nations have not been quick to embrace the people who came back in under Bill C-31. There's some resentment and there's still some friction. Again, all created by the Indian Act, but it's important. She makes a very important
ridiculous
point.
to have these legislative things that just divide people up on the basis of race. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And we're over time for a break, and we will try to take as many calls as we can when we come right back.
Al comes into the office when he has a vertebral subluxation, and I take my car to him when the brakes are squeaking.
Al comes to my gym to get in shape, and I go to his place to get my car in shape.
Al takes care of my car, and I give Al the number 6, the principal.
Hi, I'm Al. Al's car care package costs $34.95. It includes oil and filter, rotate tires, top all the fluids, a free brake inspection, free windshield washer fluid top up for the whole year.
For furniture, shop with confidence at Dodds because we won't be underserved.
Dodds Furniture!
Contemporary or classic, choose from world-famous Van Gogh designs, now proudly made in BC. Manufactured with premium kiln-dried hardwoods, select the fabric and style to match your lifestyle. An excellent investment in quality. Van Gogh Designs at Dodds Furniture.
selection, prices, quality, guarantee. Why go anywhere else? See you here, Pilgrim.
They'll find them.
Give this little one a bed.
There are no more beds.
I don't know how long she's been down there. For you.
No. We'll find you someplace.
And Laura wouldn't have died if this community could agree on a real hospital. If we can forget our differences.
Я можу дозволити $50.
Ми будували найліпшу стайну.
То ми збудуємо шпиталь? Ну, так. Добре.
Our community did get together and build a real hospital with free services. Maybe we started something.
And we're talking about issues in our own community and some of the history of what we've been doing with Aboriginal people. And we'll go straight back to the phone lines. And I am sorry for Sam and Seashelt. I don't know what happened, and I hope you're okay. And we were talking about you during the break. And we'll go back and talk to Polly in Vancouver. Hi, Polly.
Oh, good afternoon. What amazes me is how history is so inaccurate in portraying Native people, just like Pocahontas and Dancing with Wolves. It's all just total brainwashing. And also, let me say this, that they always said that natives scalped people. Well, what they did was they put natives on reserves where they couldn't grow anything. They didn't give them any food. They didn't give them any blankets. And early in the morning, they would come and raid them and shoot at their children. And the natives got so upset, they said, now how are we going to get back at these people that have hurt us so badly? And that's where they thought of scalping. And it's because they were treated and almost tried to be wiped out. And now it's really cute and trendy to like natives. But frankly, Judy, I think I don't really trust you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And now let's talk to Odita in Souk. Hi, Odita.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm an Israeli, and we are on a sabbatical here in Canada for 2 years.
Right.
And I made it a point to study as much as I can about the First Nation culture.
Right.
And I'm very honored and fortunate to have some very, very good First Nation who are my best friends.
Right.
Now, it's amazing to me that on the eve of the Holocaust Memorial Day, this program is coming up.
Right.
Because we, the Jews, we know what it means to be persecuted.
Right.
And the world tried to wipe us out. But the moment we understood that we have to do for ourselves the same way the native people are now understanding it,
right,
we built a country.
Right.
So I feel that the First Nations are our brothers and sisters, and that's how I call my First Nations friends.
Okay.
And I'm sure that this is the right way, and I just want to support. And I say, well, look at us, 6 million of us went.
Right.
And now
there's a lot of strength.
And now there is a 50th anniversary of our country.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Odita. That's a very nice message to remember. That out of the worst, one of the worst international events that could happen. Yeah. You know, I'm going to try and fit in another call because I know a lot of people want to talk to you. So let's talk to Cecilia in Vancouver. Go ahead. Cecilia? Okay, maybe she's gone. Well, then that gives us a chance to talk about things. What do you want to accomplish with the book? Where do you want to go from here?
I think that our goal in accomplishing the book, my goal as a journalist, was to make human the stories of the people who went to residential schools, so who were growing up with fetal alcohol syndrome,
right,
who were sexually abused or offenders living in a Canadian prison. And I think because I, as a journalist, experienced those directly, I wanted to convey some of that message. Because I think when we objectify people, we're able to say, well, let them find their own solution. They have enough resources. And I think that if people take these stories to heart, then they'll find some way to act as individual Canadians. And it may be as simple as political lobbying. It may be supporting the idea of some form of compensation or inquiry.
Right.
I think that, you know, that every Canadian should think that they can take individual action.
Okay. Now, Ernie, one of the most important issues, as we showed the occupation of the BC Treaty Commission, you've pointed out that a lot of Aboriginal people are young, and many of them are angry, and they don't want to end up in the jail or on the street or whatever. How do we make sure that that we can work with them? Because there's not a lot of trust there. A lot of them are feeling that, they don't trust some of their elders because they think they're negotiating away their birthright. They certainly don't trust a lot of the media or people who might want to reach out to them. How do you build a bridge?
Well, what's really important here is that the current generation of Aboriginal leadership in our community, and I would include myself amongst them, and there are many others in this province, really have to make sure that we are in tune with the issues that these young folks are up against.
Right.
We have to remember that just at the turn of the millennium, the vast majority of Aboriginal people, in fact they are now, are very young people. In fact, there will be in excess of 200,000 Aboriginal youth just at the turn of the millennium.
Right.
We have to be forward-thinking. We have to consider what the needs and interests of these young folks will be, so that whatever foundation we lay now in terms of treaty negotiations, plans for self-governance,
right,
and the like, consider that demographic.
Right.
So we have to consider those things.
There's a lot of people who are wanting help right now. That's part of what we're doing tomorrow, because what we tried to do today was talk a little bit about the history, but there's also problems in downtown Vancouver, especially with fetal alcohol effect and fetal alcohol syndrome. If we invest now in some of those programs, it's going to save us a lot in the long run. This is one of the things that your message is.
It's exactly. We wanted to clarify some of the historical issues, and we wanted to bring issues of Aboriginal family and youth forward, so that we all can't play this game of I didn't know, I didn't appreciate, I didn't understand, no one ever told me.
Okay, well I want to thank you both for coming over here, because I know you're over from the Lower Mainland, and it's a very important piece of work that you did.
Okay.
So thanks very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Okay, and we're going to have some closing comments and a preview of what's coming up after the break.
Remember me, I'm the baking soda they used to absorb fridge odors. Onion power. Food's gonna get spoiled if a new box doesn't show up soon.
Uh-oh! You foods will keep your smells to yourselves.
Isn't it time to change your Arm & Hammer?
When the sweetest pets are little stinkers, try Arm & Hammer Carpet Deodorizer. It eliminates pet odors trapped deep down and leaves a fresh, clean scent. Arm & Hammer Carpet Deodorizer takes the pets out of carpets.
Rainy day blues got you down, don't frown, girl. Just smile at the sun and cover girl seashells. She says, seashells, new shades by cover girl. Pink shells, sand castles, silver plums, and everything is sun-kissed. So get what she says. Cover girl, seashells, a fresh idea, a fresh face to the world. Easy breezy, beautiful cover girl.
Hi, can I take your order?
Can I get a hamburger?
Will that be all?
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, come again. Can I take your order?
Fish.
All right.
For healthy-looking skin, wash with Maxima. It helps scrub out oil and dirt, won't overstrip skin of its natural moisture like some soap can.
Look, if you're free tonight, maybe we could go to a movie.
I'm afraid I don't get off until 10.
Maxima girls get noticed.
You know what to do. Wild party last night, huh? So what happened to you? Last I heard, you were headed for some body piercing place. Man, that stuff's too weird for me. Anyway, I'm sure you didn't do anything too stupid. 'Cause hey, you're the man, cool guy. See you at the beach.
And coming up tomorrow, we're looking at part 2 on stolen children, and that's about the contemporary issues and how we can solve them. And then child custody issues and the new federal laws. And we're going to look at auxiliary police and the issue of the removal of their guns. And we forgot to show you during the show, this is what the book looks like, Stolen from Our Embrace. It's a very large book. It has a lot of very important information in it. And one reason that we brought this to you today and tomorrow is because we feel that part of the solution is for us to be aware. And it's so easy to deny some of these issues. If you have comments or questions about tomorrow's show, you can fax us at 250-389-1226. We always believe it is very important to have a dialogue, and we have to have as many people at the table talking about it as possible. Tomorrow we are going to try to link up with the Native Youth Movement so that they can at least tell us what their issues are. But we will be dealing with how we can prevent further erosion of the societies in downtown urban centers with our Aboriginal people. I'm Judy Tyabji. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.
I do a fake.